Math 2, Unit 12, Section 4. Today we're going to be talking about solving quadratic functions by square roots. So, just real quick, if you look at these problems, do you see how all of them have squared terms in them? That means they're quadratic functions, which means they would be a U-shaped graph if we graph them. Okay? So, what we're going to do is we're going to solve for x on these functions. When I'm solving for x, that is actually finding the exact point that these graphs will cross the x-axis. Okay? We're not going to worry about plotting these points today. We're just going to find them. But when we get our answers for x, that's telling us the point on the x-axis that the curve will touch. Okay? All right. So I'm going to give you some notes up here at the beginning on how you solve with square roots. So, step 1. Isolate. What does isolate mean?
To be alone.
By itself. I'm just going to put that in parentheses. So you're going to isolate the root or square. For today, we're really only dealing with squares. So whatever is being squared, if you have parentheses that are being squared, you want to get that parenthesis by itself. If you just have x being squared, you want to get that x by itself. Okay? So that's step 1. Step 2, you will take the square root of both sides. Okay, and then there's one more, step 3. And that is that anytime you take the square root the answer is plus or minus. What that means is that you get a positive answer and a negative answer. So that means there's actually 2 answers. Now let's say the answer is 0. Can 0 be positive and negative?
Yes.
No. 0 is just 0. Okay? It's not positive, it's not negative, it's just 0. So there will be some instances when it is just one answer, but most of the time it'll be 2.
Is that supposed to be positive or negative?
Yes, and so normally we'll write it as plus or minus, meaning the positive answer and the negative. If you wanted to write the answer twice and write the positive answer and the negative, you can, but this is kind of a shortcut that we use a lot of math. Other questions? Okay, I can see a few of you still writing, so I'm just going to wait another few seconds here. Okay. So, example 1. The first thing we want to do is isolate the root or square. So in this case, we're going to isolate the square. We want to get x squared by itself. What will I do first? No, not yet.
Add 100.
Add 100. So you always want to kind of get rid of the adding or subtracting first. In fact, it's almost like it's the opposite of order of operations when you're solving for a variable. But yeah, you take care of all adding and subtracting first. Okay, what would be next in order to isolate the x squared? Now we're going to divide by 4 to both sides. Okay, so we do that. I get x squared equals, and what's 100 divided by 4? Good. Okay, next, what do I do? Now we can take the square root of both sides. So see how I am writing the square root? I am taking the square root. Anytime you take the square root, your answer will be plus or minus. That's what I'm talking about. Because sometimes in problems you'll have a square root. That time it's not plus or minus. It's only when you're taking the square root. So this is going to be x equals, and what is the square root of 25? 5. But we would write this as plus or minus 5. Okay? What that means is 5 and negative 5 are my answers.
Is that going to be it for every single one, or?
That's what we were talking about, yes. Most answers will have 2 answers, a plus or a minus. Some of them, if it's 0, you wouldn't have 2. It would just be the 1. Okay, questions before I move on? Okay, this next one, I'm going to change this for right now to 6. So we'll make it a little bit easier for this problem here for a minute. What would I do in order to get rid of the fraction that's here? Who remembers? I can eliminate fractions by multiplying by the denominator, the LCD. Okay, so in this case, if I multiply every single term by 3, I will eliminate my fractions. So I'm going to do that to make it a little easier on myself. So I multiply every single term in the problem by 3 in order to eliminate the fraction. Where the fraction is, when I multiply by 3 and I have 2/3 here, those cancel. And so we're left with 2x squared. Good. Then we multiply 3 times negative 6, which is negative 18. And 3 times 0 is 0. This number didn't have a fraction, so there wasn't anything to cancel. And so you just multiply whatever's there together. Okay? Any other questions right now on this problem? Okay. What will I do next in order to get my square by itself? Good. Add 18 to both sides. 2x squared equals 18. What will I do next? Good. Divide by 2. I have x squared equals 9. And then the last step in order to solve for x is to square root both sides. And anytime I take the square root, my answer will be plus or minus. Good. Plus or minus. And then what is the square root of 9? 3. Okay, questions? Okay, you guys ready for the next one? Okay. You're good? Okay. Do you notice here how the whole parenthesis is being squared? Okay, so this one is slightly different, but again, we want to get the square by itself. So this time, this whole thing is my square. So what will I do to get the square by itself? Good, I'm going to start by adding 10 to both sides. That cancels out. We have 10 equals parentheses x minus 3 squared. Is my square by itself? Yes, good. And so what am I going to do? I'm going to take the square root of both sides. Okay, as I'm looking out, I feel like there are some people that may not be taking notes right now. I want to remind you that everyone needs to be taking notes and that your notes are part of your homework. So this whole unit, I'm collecting your notes along with your homework every day. If it's not completed, you're not going to earn full credit, okay? So make sure you're doing notes with us. Okay, so what happens when I take the square root of both sides? Good, it's a plus or minus root 10. Because can I simplify root 10? No. So we're just going to leave it as root 10. Before I had the square root of 9, which simplified to 3. This one doesn't simplify that way, so I'm going to leave it as root 10. And this equals x minus 3. Is x by itself? No. So what would I do in order to get x by itself?
Add 3.
Good. I'm going to add 3 to both sides. Now this is where you have to remember some things. And that is, can I add 3 and root 10 together? No, because one has a root and one is just a regular number. And so how you would write this is x equals 3, and then we keep our plus or minus root 10. If this was a whole number, I would end up separating it into 2 different problems. And I'd go 3 plus, let's say root 10 was 5. Then I'd go 3 plus 5, which makes 8. And then I would do 3 minus 5, which would make -2. And I'd get the 2 different answers, okay? But I can't simplify 3 plus root 10. So I would just leave it like this. But let's write it out to make sure you understand what I mean. So I'm going to put or. So this means 3 plus root 10 and 3 minus root 10. If these were numbers where I could actually add them to that number and simplify, I would, but I can't. So on ones that you can't simplify, it's okay to leave it as plus or minus. But on problems that you can simplify, you need to. Okay? And I think we will get a chance to do that in our homework. Okay. Do you think you guys are ready to try the next one on your own? No?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's go ahead and try this one.
Myself?
Yes.
I think I got it.
Okay, once you get your answer, check with someone that you're sitting next to. And I'm going to give you about 20 more seconds. Yeah, so on this problem, normally I would just leave it as the red, but I just wanted to show you how it breaks up, because sometimes you could end up simplifying. Okay, and I'm going to go to like your homework problems when we're done and show you one where it simplifies. Okay. Okay, so I should be pulling 6 right now, but I don't have them out. What is my first step?
Add 12.
Very good. Add 12 is correct. Okay, we're doing that because we're isolating our square. 12 equals x plus 1 squared. Is the square by itself?
No. Yes.
Yes, because the parenthesis is what's being squared. So the square is by itself right now. Okay, x isn't by itself, but the square is. Okay, so we take the square root of both sides. And so I have the square root of 12, but what do I need to put in front of that? Plus or minus, very good. Equals x plus 1. Now this one is slightly different because could we simplify the square root of 12?
No. Yeah.
Yes. Now it's not like the whole root goes away, but what does 12 break down to?
6 and 2.
Okay, 6 and 2. And then 6 breaks down to? Good. And so we have a pair of 2's with the 3 left over. Are you guys remembering this? Okay, so when I rewrite this now, it's going to be plus or minus 2 root 3 equals x plus 1. If you can simplify your root, you need to simplify it. Okay? And what am I going to do next in order to solve for x? Good, subtract 1. So I get x equals -1 plus or minus 2 root 3.
Whoa.
And I wrote 2 root 2, not sure why. 2 root 3. questions on this example? Yes. I wouldn't say it's wrong, but it's not in simplified form. Okay? So if you can break down the number and pull out a pair, you need to do that. Now, let's say it's on a test. If it was a fill-in, I'd probably take off a portion. Does that make sense? Okay. All right, next one. What's my first step?
Write down the
Add 20, very good.
oh.
Okay, 20 equals 2 parenthesis x minus 7 squared. Is my square by itself? No. What's my next step? Isolate the root, and how do I do, or the square? Good. Divide by 2. So now I have 10 equals x minus 7 squared. What's next? What? Square root. Whenever you make a square root, it becomes what? Plus or minus. Root 10 equals x minus 7. Can I simplify root 10? No, because if I break it down, the numbers that multiply to be 10 are 5 and 2. No numbers there are the same. Okay? Next, I will do what? Add 7. So, we end up getting x equals 7 plus or minus root 10. Okay, we always do the plus and minus part at the end, and the number that doesn't have the plus or minus at the beginning. Okay, let's have you try the next example on your own. Okay, are we ready? Okay. Step 1 is to do what?
Subtract 20.
Subtract 20. Okay, side conversations need to stop, please. Okay, what do I do next? Good. Divide by -4 to both sides. We have x plus 7 squared equals, and what's -20 divided by -4? Positive 5. Okay. Is the square by itself?
No. Yes.
There we go. Thanks, Aaron. Yes, so we're going to take the square root of both sides. When I do that, I get x plus 7 equals plus or minus root 5. Can I simplify the square root of 5? No. So all I'm going to do is subtract 7. I get x equals -7 plus or minus root 5. Any questions? down to our application problem.
Oh.
Okay. A ball is thrown vertically upward with an initial speed of 96 feet per second. I remember seeing something kind of like this yesterday. Its height after t seconds is given by this formula, and this should have been h equals over here, so I'm just going to kind of move it so the formula's all together. So h equals negative 16, parentheses, t minus 3 squared plus 144. The next question it asks is, when does the ball hit the ground? What did we, with this equation, what did we talk about last time? What did this equation help us to find?
The vertex.
We found the vertex. So if we're drawing a picture, we talked about how this picture maybe looks something kind of like this. And so we found that is that called the what?
The vertex.
It's called the vertex, but what else? The maximum value, right? And what is my vertex on there? 3, 144. So it's saying that at 3 seconds, it is at 144 feet. The question today, though, is asking, when does the ball hit the ground? So they're wanting to know, when is this parabola going to be hitting the ground? When is it touching the x-axis? Okay, the way that we do this, and we kind of talked about this a little bit at the beginning when I was explaining what we're finding. The way we find this is to factor and set each factor equal to 0. And that will give us the values for when it hits the ground. Okay? All right, are you guys ready? Or need another minute to write something? Okay, so we learned today about getting the square by itself, didn't we? So we want our height to be 0. We want to find when it's at ground level, at 0. So we're going to write this as, and I'm going to put the 0 on the other side, negative 16, parenthesis, t minus 3 squared plus 144 equals 0. What will I do next?
Add them, subtract them.
We want to get this square by itself. Very good. Subtract 144 to both sides. These cancel. Negative 16, parentheses, t minus 3 squared equals negative 144. What will I do now? Very good. Divide by negative 16 to both sides. We get t minus 3 squared equals, and what is 144 divided by 16? 9 is the correct answer. Okay? Sabrina, what's next? Okay. Anybody, what's next?
Square root.
Take the square root of both sides. Whenever I take the square root, that means my answer is going to be what? Plus or minus. So we have t minus 3 equals plus or minus 3. Now, is t by itself?
No.
No. What do I do?
Add 3.
Good. Add 3. And this is what I was talking about. You guys are going to see how it works.
T equals plus or minus 6.
So I get t equals 3 plus or minus 3. So this is where we're going to set up two different equations. We're going to set up one equation as 3 plus 3, which equals 6. And the other equation is 3 minus 3, which equals 0. So when does the ball hit the ground? Very good. So we're going to write that specifically, though. So 0 seconds. It's at the ground when it starts. And then also 6 seconds. And do you see what I mean? Like how here I can actually simplify this?
Yeah.
Okay.
Gotcha.
So we're going to do 2 more examples from our homework on the back side. So if we can go ahead and turn that over. We are going to do problem 3 and problem 8. Okay, so starting with problem 3, we're going to do part of your homework right now together.
Yay.
I need to get the square by itself. What will I do first on number 3? Add 6 is correct. Make sure you're doing these problems with us because they're slightly different from our notes. Okay, 6 equals 11x squared. What is next? Divide by 11. Now, can this reduce? No. So right now I have x squared equals 6 over 11. What is my next step? I have to square root both sides. Okay, so we want to get x. So when you're taking the square root of a fraction, write it as a square root on each piece. Okay, so that means that I have x equals the square root of 6 over the square root of 11. And what else should I have here?
Plus minus.
Plus or minus. Okay, now, is it okay to have a root in the denominator?
No.
No. What do we do in order to get rid of the root in the denominator?
Rationalize the denominator.
Very good. Rationalize the denominator is correct. Who remembers how to do it?
Plus.
Multiply by root 11, because the only thing that will get rid of root 11 is having another root 11, because that gives you 2 of them. It makes a pair. But whatever I do to the bottom, I also have to do to the top. So this ends up becoming 11's going to be in the denominator. Can I break up the 6 or the 11's to make any pairs?
No.
6 will break down to 2 and 3. 11 can't break down. So there aren't 2 of any numbers. So we just multiply them together, and that makes what? Root 66. So that's my answer. Plus or minus root 66 over 11. That is funny, and that was not even done on purpose. Okay. Questions on 3. Okay, number 8 is like kind of similar to what we did on our application problem. So we're going to practice it one more time. What will I do first? We should not be looking at our phones. Okay, I have x plus 3 squared equals 4. What's next? Square root both sides. That makes what?
2.
X plus 3 equals
2.
not 2, not 4,
1.
not 1.
3. No.
Thank you, Jennifer. Plus or minus 2.
Oh my.
Okay, what will I do now? Good. Subtract 3. And so I have x equals negative 3 plus or minus 2. Now, can I simplify that?
No. Yes. Yes.
Because they're both whole numbers. There's no roots. So we're going to write 2 equations. Negative 3 plus 2, and that equals what? Negative 1. And negative 3 minus 2 equals negative 5. So those are actually my answers. X equals negative 1 and negative 5. Okay, do we have any questions? We're good?